Welcome to another astral projection screencast. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about adjusting your focus in the astral world. To get to a microscopic level, you must adjust your focus to increasingly small objects. To get to a macroscopic level, you would do the same thing, just in reverse. You do this subconsciously to navigate the astral world, often adjusting your focus from things like solar systems to man-made structures, or the other way around. And once you get over your expectations of spatial-based movement, you will be able to observe things infinitely large and infinitely small, like atoms and galaxies. So start by projecting in your house. Draw your attention to a small object somewhere, preferably organic, considering mechanical things can be scary sometimes. Take an apple, for instance. Move inside the apple, then move inside whatever's well defined in it. That would probably be a seed. So you're inside an apple seed. At this point, you'll probably have the momentum to enter something a bit more abstract, like a cell. Then you can go down to the cell organ, and then molecules, and so forth. Every time you adjust your focus on any given object, it becomes easier to get focus on that object again later. This also applies to navigating at normal scopes. Eventually, you'll be able to navigate to a known place seemingly in an instant if you've been to that place enough. I believe at least one of our non-physical bodies remembers things similar to how the brain does. That is, by creating and strengthening connections just on a more abstract level. These connections would be an extremely efficient way of representing paths. So when I was doing microscopic observations in the real-time zone, I was able to observe the dynamics of space by moving into outer space and pinpointing my awareness on the space itself. You can't really use momentum in space. It's kind of an on-off thing when you're adjusting your focus in this manner. If you need to use momentum, I suggest going into Earth's atmosphere and trying this experiment. I personally did not use the atmosphere because I was getting distracted by random things floating around in the atmosphere, so I decided to do it in the depths of space. So the dynamics of space, they were the most profoundly mechanical things I have ever observed. There were strict rules governing the movements of particles and things that form space itself. I felt like I wasn't even close to being able to comprehend them. And in this sense, I felt sort of forbidden to observe at this level. I know a lot of people would feel completely forbidden, especially the religious folk, and it greatly impairs your ability to project. From what I've read on the internet, this seems to be a pretty common problem. Obviously, most of the posts that you see regarding this problem about being forbidden and stuff like that is from religious people or has some sort of religious context. And the religions at hand are typically the ones that worship an omnipotence God and the ones that make people feel guilty for living, like Christianity. And thinking in this manner really impairs your ability to project, and you're not really going to be able to do anything beyond just fiddle about in the astral world. I tried microscopic on a non-real-time projection and found that everything consisted of infinitely detailed and intrinsically linked vortices. The vortices were composed of smaller vortices and in turn were composed of even smaller vortices. This seemed to go on forever. With that in mind, you can probably understand why I can't even begin to describe or quantify the levels of focus on these planes. Also, the vortices may be our perception of toroids. We may just have our attention on the most agitated area of the toroid, being the vortex-like form in the middle. I have a lot to say about toroids, so I'll save it for another video. So here's a toroid depiction. They can be long or fat, it doesn't matter, as long as they're self-contained and maintain this energetic form. And here's kind of how we see it in the astral world. And then sometimes you only see half of this and it's just a vortex, whereas this is a wormhole kind of thing. So I talked a bit about microscopic focus, and now we'll talk about macroscopic focus. So macroscopic projections will feel a bit more natural, and you will feel like you have expanded your awareness sometimes. I'm not sure if you actually have. I've always seen awareness and focus to be two separate things in the astral world, but I have yet to fully establish this. At this level, you'll be able to observe things like galaxies and clusters of stars. You'll also be able to move around pretty rapidly. So you may be wondering what my most macroscopic projection was. Well, I was in a real-time projection. I was able to observe a group of 3 to 4 galaxies simultaneously, and that's as macroscopic as I've ever gotten. And they seem to have just started colliding, which would explain why I observed them as a group. This also goes with my theory that the astral body is naturally attracted to high energy events. Sometimes you're pulled to things uncontrollably. At the time, I was somewhat uncomfortable with observing galaxies. Yet my astral body wanted to expand to encompass more things for some reason. And I was like, no, I don't want to observe at this level right now. And I was working against my astral body. And we kind of do this with all of our bodies, don't we? And it's probably the most unhealthy thing you can possibly do. Anyways, if I were to leave the astral body to its mechanisms and observe whatever it wants, I would have observed the next most defined structuring of matter, which would likely have been a vast webbing of galaxies. And I felt at the time that I was unready to observe at this level, so I didn't really go for it. And I was kind of just going against my astral body. Adjusting focus is a way to perceive movement in the astral world, but there are others. For instance, raising and lowering your frequency will often result in perceivable movement. It's important to distinguish these kinds of movements to get to where you want to go in the astral world. And I'm hoping to have the time to make videos on these other perceivable movements. At the moment, I only know about the raising and lowering your frequency, but I'm sure there's others out there, and I hope that you can keep an eye out for them. And that's it for this video. See you later.